feel for these people. Many of these people are my friends, and I know they are getting many concerns and many wishes expressed to them from their constituents. But, their answer has been to conduct yet another audit led by a guy who indulges in Hugo Chavez conspiracy theories. My answer is simply to tell the truth. Tell these people, I am so sorry. You have been lied to repeatedly over the last 6 months, and my heart feels for you, but it's a lie.
What a novel idea. I am so sorry you've been lied to. That was the head of the Maricopa County, Arizona Elections Department expressing his anger and disappointment with leaders who peddled Trump's big lie of a stolen election. More than 6 months after the election, the fallout from Trump's conspiracies is everywhere, from the faux audit of millions of ballots in Arizona to the wave of voter suppression bills predicated on a lie filed in 47 state houses all across this country by Republicans who cite concerns over the non-existent election integrity concerns stoked by the big lie. As part of a push for accountability for the big lie's biggest promoters, Democratic officials have filed motions in court to sanction the lawyers and the plaintiffs who brought some of the dozens of lawsuits seeking to overturn the election results. Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro is just one of the leaders who has filed motions against the big lie, specifically against Rudy Giuliani and his conduct during and after the 2020 election. And joining us now is Pennsylvania's Attorney General Josh Shapiro. You and I were talking in real time, but Pennsylvania really was the test state for this push to delegitimize the election result from the earliest days after the election. And I wonder how it feels now.
Well, you and I did talk in real time as these issues were being litigated and the elections were being certified. And that's exactly what happened. We had a smooth and safe election. The results were certified. The issues were litigated. And yet the big lie continues even to this day, Nicole, where you have this big lie fueled on in part by Donald Trump, but also in part by the unethical conduct of some attorneys, Rudy Giuliani and others. And it seems to me that we can't allow them to use the courts of the United States to perpetuate that big lie and to do so without any consequence. They have not only harmed our democracy, but they've cost taxpayers here in Pennsylvania and across the country millions and millions of dollars.
And they threaten all of us. There's an intersection with the big lie and the current domestic violent extremism threat. But you've written a letter for the ages. I want to read some of it. Mr. Giuliani peddled false claims both in and out of court that ex-President Trump had in fact won the presidential election or that he was the victim of widespread voter fraud. Neither, of course, is true. And although Mr. Giuliani's lies predictably failed to convince any judge to disregard the voters' will, his abusive misuse of courts had serious consequences. Pennsylvania election workers have received death threats from individuals convinced of the truth of Mr. Giuliani's lies. And Pennsylvania spent more than $3 million on outside attorneys to respond to election-related lawsuits, including more than $1.7 million to respond to lawsuits brought by the Trump campaign. These consequences must not be ignored. What is the precedent for, I know all this is unprecedented, but you can't just go to court knowingly making up gobbledygook. I mean, what is your degree of optimism that there will be some sanction for Giuliani?
We do have an anti-gobbledygook rule in all of our courts, our state courts and our federal courts, Nicole. And the reality is Rudy Giuliani took it to a level never seen before, in my estimation. And the consequences, of course, you can draw a straight line between what he was saying in court here in Pennsylvania, what he was saying on the stump, and ultimately what happened on the steps of our Capitol and inside the Capitol on January the 6th. We appealed to the proper disciplinary board in New York State, who oversee Rudy Giuliani's license, to simply say, don't look the other way. Make sure that there are consequences for this type of conduct. We do not allow this in our courts here in Pennsylvania or in our federal courts, and there must be consequences. Part of the reason why the big lie has been able to take hold with some is because they've been able to use the institutions of our democracy to perpetuate those untruths, including our courts. We have rules against that, and those rules need to be applied to Rudy Giuliani, as well as the others that we've sought sanctions from.
When you look at the national picture, the big lie has done more in a shorter amount of time to push through a Republican agenda than really anything that I can think of. 47 states are looking at close to 400 voter suppression laws to solve a problem that is non-existent. There is not widespread voter fraud that needs a legislative solution. It's a crime, and we have a criminal justice system that catches and prosecutes anyone that happens to do that. And as far as what we've seen, most of those people happen to be people that cast illegal votes for Donald Trump. So I wonder, when you sort of step back, and I know this isn't your day job, but when you look at the national picture, do you feel like the big lie is winning, or the people protecting the democracy are winning?
I think the people protecting our democracy certainly are winning and have won as a result of the fact that Donald Trump was not able to cling to power. But make no mistake, so much damage has been done. I mean, let's examine the record, as you correctly noted here in Pennsylvania. We looked into allegations of voter fraud. We and our law enforcement partners, there was no widespread voter fraud. We found 3 examples of voter fraud, and in all 3 cases, they were trying to cast an extra ballot for Donald Trump. Yet all of the major candidates for the United States Senate and the governorship here in Pennsylvania on the Republican side can't come together and acknowledge the simple truth that there was no widespread voter fraud, that Joe Biden won this election, and they can't condemn the big lie, mainly because the Republican Party has been hijacked by Donald Trump. They are afraid of him. They can't win a primary without him, and I don't think they can win many general elections with him. He is toxic, not just to our democracy, but to the Republican Party. That's what's playing out. Now, while all that political stuff plays out, we want to make sure that the lawyers who engaged in this unethical practice, unethical conduct, and who tried to undermine our democracy through the use of the courts, that they are held accountable in this process as well. That can't be ignored.
When you look at the real focus on election officials and people that have your job and people that serve as secretaries of state, what is, in your view, the most egregious sort of lasting damage? I mean, we talk about death threats now. It doesn't even leave the news anymore. But I remember when Gabriel Sterling, an election official in Georgia, came out and said someone's going to get shot. We took notice, and we broke into our coverage and covered that. You've now got a fake audit where they're looking for bamboo by a company called Cyber Ninjas, founded by a conspiracy theorist. He has in his hands 2.1 million Maricopa County ballots. I mean, where have we lost the thread on just how scary and dangerous this is?
It's super scary and dangerous, and really we have to salute the heroes of this election cycle, the poll workers, Republicans and Democrats, people like Al Schmidt in Philadelphia and Katie Hobbs in Arizona. You're talking about Maricopa County. I mean, really some Jocelyn Benson in Michigan, just some incredible leaders who were secretaries of state, and of course many attorneys general and governors as well, who made sure that the rule of law held in these states. But real damage has been done here. I mean, the fact that people question the integrity of this process that is run by our neighbors, that has been secure and safe and sound, where there's no evidence that anything was stolen the way Donald Trump suggests, that's a real detriment to our democracy. But yet, look, I voted today in our municipal primary here in Pennsylvania, yet these great Americans come back and work the polls and make sure that people's voices have been heard. And we are bigger than Donald Trump. We are bigger than the big lie. It is certainly infecting our democracy and poisoning the Republican Party right now, but we're bigger than that, and we will overcome this. The best way to overcome it, though, is to have accountability in our system for the lawyers who perpetuated the big lie, for the politicians who enable it, and to make sure that there is an honest conversation about what happened in these courtrooms in Pennsylvania and what happened on January 6th at the Capitol, and the connection between the two. There's a direct causal connection between the two. It must be explored, and people must be held accountable.
Well, I appreciate your optimism on a day like today when we're covering Kevin McCarthy blowing up the bipartisan commission. We will continue to call on you. Pennsylvania's Attorney General Josh Shapiro, thank you for spending some time with us today. We have breaking news from Capitol Hill. We reported at the top of the previous hour that House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy today came out against the creation of a commission to investigate the Capitol insurrection. Now we've gotten word that House Republican leadership is urging members to vote no when the commission comes up for a vote tomorrow. Let's bring into our conversation NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Garrett Haake. Garrett, is Steve Scalise whipping votes against investigating the deadly insurrection?
He is, and this is a change from this morning, even after Kevin McCarthy came out against this commission. As of this morning, this was Kevin McCarthy's opinion. He put out his statement saying that he was opposed to this and that he would be voting no. And our team checked in with the whip's office, and they said essentially that they were staying out of this. They weren't going to whip members either way. Now, about 24 hours, we believe, from this vote taking place, House Republican leadership have changed their tune, and Steve Scalise, the GOP whip, is now advising members that they should vote no on this. Now, the horse may have already left the barn on this. I think House members have pretty strong opinions one way or the other, but it is interesting to go through this memo that Scalise's office sent to House Republicans for their reasons of opposing this. You know, they say that John Katko, the ranking Republican member who helped negotiate this deal, did a fine job, but that the scope is too narrow and that it only focuses on January 6th. It doesn't include things like the congressional baseball practice shooting from 2017. Well, Republicans were in control of the House, the Senate, and the White House in 2017. If they were interested in investigating the baseball shooting further, they could have done it at any time in the next 18 months in which they were still in control. It also talks about a concern that the investigation, the commission rather, could somehow interfere with the ongoing criminal investigations that are taking place primarily here in D.C., but also across the country related to the Capitol insurrection. It's not entirely clear to me, who's not a lawyer or a law enforcement expert, that argument holds very much water either. So a significant change in position from House Republican leadership, although I guess we should say probably not a surprising one here, given everything we talked about last week, their desire to be done talking about January 6th, essentially by any means necessary.
Two follow-up questions for you. Do we know if Elise Stefanik, Mr. Scalise, or Mr. Kevin McCarthy heard from Donald Trump today?
We do not know the answer to that question, although it is a worthy one that I will try to report further.
Do we know if the Justice Department, under new management of Attorney General Garland and Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco, had expressed any concern about the existence of a 9/11-style commission interfering with any of their criminal proceedings?
I've certainly not heard that. In fact, the OMB, essentially advising the White House, put out their statement saying that they should, or not the OMB, excuse me, the White House's official statement on this is that this commission should go forward. So if there was concern within the Justice Department, it did not make it up the chain to the president or anywhere else in the administration that I've heard.
NBC's Garrett Hake, thank you so much for running to a camera and bringing us this story in this live report. We're really grateful to you. When we return,
I am very concerned.
It's 5 o'clock in the East. Some of the most chilling sounds from the day of the Capitol insurrection. Rioters chanting to execute the sitting Vice President of the United States of America. The threat to Mike Pence's life was so real and so urgent, he was rushed out of the Senate chamber by his Secret Service detail and held in an undisclosed location. Reporting on that day found that rioters were less than 100 feet away from where Mike Pence and his family were hiding. It was an astonishing scene, seeing the Vice President flee for his safety as the Capitol was breached, which makes reporting in a new bombshell book by our friend at the Washington Post, Carol Leonnig, all the more important and shocking. In Zero Fail, Leonnig takes a deep look into the history of the Secret Service, detailing the agency's challenges and missteps over the course of 11 presidents. Leonnig writes how politics and extremism have now seeped into the agency. Here's her stunning account of what happened following the events of January 6th. Quote, despite the heroism of their brothers in arms that day, some Secret Service personnel again took to social media in the days after January 6th, empathizing with and defending the mission of the armed rioters who breached the Capitol, the same ones who had endangered the Pence agents and pummeled Capitol police officers with metal pipes and bats. One Secret Service officer called the armed protesters patriots, seeking to undo an illegitimate election, and falsely claimed to her friends that disguised Antifa members had started the violence. One presidential detail agent reposted a popular anti-Biden screed that criticized Democrats for their relentless attacks on Trump. Truly alarming findings that raise concerns about how far the infection of Trumpian disinformation and extremism seeped into the agency tasked with protecting the lives of then President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. Here's more about how the real President-elect, faced limited protection due to the former guy's lies. Quote, because of the president's insistence that he was the victim of some inexplicable fraud, Biden did not immediately receive the protective shield of a specially equipped armored car, a 24/7 counter-assault team, and a beefed-up detail with more veteran agents. The service spread the word to confused agents that they simply had to wait until the results were truly official, when Trump conceded or when the votes were certified by the Electoral College. But many agents said this delay ignored the agency's own security training. Once he became the presumptive president-elect, Biden was automatically a bigger target for assassination. The decision to withhold this extra security only compounded the Biden camp's fears that Trump had corrupted this elite band. What few realized was that clusters of agents, including some on Trump's detail, were openly rooting for Trump, a fact hiding in plain sight. Leonnig reports that members of Biden's transition were troubled by what this meant for the president's protection, and some agents who Biden knew from his time as vice president were brought back as supervisors. Questions swirling about the safety of the current president come as Congress is wrestling with the formation of an independent commission to investigate what happened on 1/6. House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy announcing this morning he will not support the bipartisan deal to establish one. It's a frightening look into the politicization of the people who are supposed to keep the leader of the free world safe. And it's where we start this hour with one of our most favorite reporters and friends. Three-time Pulitzer Prize winner Carol Leonnig, Washington Post national reporter and MSNBC contributor, and author of the stunning new book out today, Zero Fail, The Rise and Fall of the Secret Service. So I know that you knew everything that was in your book. But as we've been talking about extremism in the military and extremism in law enforcement, your account of extremism in the Secret Service in and around 1/6 is just staggering. Tell me more.
I think what I found so shocking was, I was reporting on January 6th, just like you were, and literally within hours of that attack, I had agents who were reaching out to me, some former, some current, sharing with me social media postings of their colleagues, saying, look what guy number A, B, and C are saying on their personal accounts, some of them shrouded in a little bit of, acronyms or special extra nicknames, but they were sharing things about how Biden had been illegitimately elected, talking about the rioters who, again, were attacking other police officers with flagpoles to the chest and fire extinguishers to the head, describing those attackers as patriots. This was disturbing to their colleagues enough that they shared these pieces of information with me. But, Nicole, it isn't just that moment, as shocking as that is. Agents and officers had been upset starting back in June of 2020, because that's the day, June 1, when the president deployed the Secret Service and the Park Police to clear out a square for a photo op, to show that he's the authoritarian leader, he's riding herd over all these protesters. Secret Service officers were really upset about this, and they demanded to talk to their director about what in the world was going on. Why were they using this level of force? Was this appropriate with peaceable protesters? And that conversation led to many more private conversations in which agents and officers complained that members of the president's detail had MAGA hats on their desks. Supervisors had been deployed by the president to work, at least one of them, in the White House as political aides to the president. This was something that crossed a line the Secret Service had never crossed before. And there are just so many alums in that family, that noble family of Secret Service agents, who are appalled at the way the Trump administration politicized this agency, whose motto is not only, worthy of trust and confidence, but also the people elect them, we just protect them. They're supposed to be politically above reproach and independent of party politics.
Carol, what happened and where are the agents who on their personal social media accounts voiced their support for the insurrectionists? Are any of them tasked with protecting the current president or vice president?
Nicole, when I asked the Secret Service this question when we were beginning to learn these pieces, they declined to comment and said that they take all inappropriate political speech seriously and they investigate it. But they declined to answer the questions, what have you done with these individuals? Now, to their credit or in their defense, it's hard to talk about individual personnel cases, but some of these people are still working in very high levels. And for example, the person that I mentioned who became the White House Deputy Chief of Staff after running President Trump's detail, Tony Ornato, is currently the Assistant Director of the Secret Service. Now, he has great reputation as an agent, but he crossed over into a political job in the White House, and now he is back in charge at a C-suite level protecting President Biden.
Carol, we have a statement from the Secret Service I'm going to read. They say that the American people can rest assured that the U.S. Secret Service is apolitical, nonpartisan. Our focus is not on politics, but on uncompromising excellence and continual improvement, protecting national and world leaders and the security of our nation's financial system. There's no tolerance for conduct that casts doubt on the unwavering commitment to execute these missions. Were the agents protecting Mike Pence living up to that standard? I mean, was that too close for comfort for anybody that you talked to?
I think Mike Pence found himself incredibly comforted by the agents around him and believed that they went beyond, just the extra mile to protect him. 3 times his detail leader came into the Capitol hideaway where Pence and his family were stowed away, essentially hiding from the nooses outside on the lawn and from the people that were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." 3 times his detail leader came in and said, "We have got to get you out of here. It is not safe." And finally, on the 3rd time, the vice president agreed. You can see his detail leader with his hand on Pence's shoulder there in that shot. Pence did not want to leave the building. He wanted to finish the work, and he wanted to certify that election. The Secret Service somehow found a safe enough place that they were comforted that they could keep him there. But meanwhile, there were Secret Service agents on the president's detail basically empathizing with the attackers that day. And I would also add that the director who makes the statement today that they will not put up with political conduct is the same director who allowed the head of the president's detail to join the White House as a political operative, helping stage the president's campaigns, helping execute the clearing of Lafayette Square on June 1.
Which is literally one of the most, in an egregious presidency, one of the most egregious days of cumulative conduct. I want to read that excerpt from the book, because there's even more than what you've described to us. This is on Anthony Ornato, who was transferred to a political role in the Trump White House. He coordinated rallies during the pandemic. Quote, the president soon after promoted his loyal detail leader, Anthony Ornato, to a political role that was unprecedented for the nonpartisan Secret Service. At the president's urging, Ornato took on the job of presidential political advisor as the deputy chief of staff in the Trump White House. Ornato had arranged for the service to enable the president's authoritarian march across Lafayette Square on June 1st and coordinated the forceful removal of people protesting George Floyd's killing. Ornato had also been a key organizer of the president's campaign rallies out of town, putting the president's wishes ahead of the security of the people who protected him. Quote, the biggest tragedy is that Trump politicized a part of the Secret Service who pride themselves on being apolitical, one newly departed agent explained. That's the Trump effect. Now, I think Joe Hagan had that job maybe at the beginning of the Trump administration. He also had that job at the beginning of the Bush administration, George W. Bush. That job, your hands are on absolutely everything. And I wonder how you go from being so deeply enmeshed in a president's political being back to a nonpartisan Secret Service, as you said, manager, deputy director. How has the return been received?
There are a lot of alums in the Secret Service who are really disconcerted by this, and there's a small group vocal enough to say it out loud. There's also a large group inside the Secret Service who feel that this is completely inappropriate. Just because, you know, it's the idea that you crossed into a political realm and now you're returning to another one in which you're saying that you're objective, but you are willing to be a political arm, a tool. But I would say if we kind of scale back and look at this from 30,000 feet, there's something else to be said, Nicole, which is the president's impact on this agency. It was trying to recover and rebuild from a really painful series of mishaps and serial misconduct. And as it is doing that, Donald Trump arrives, who just like President Nixon, believes that the Secret Service is not an entity that is important to vital to continuing and safeguarding our democracy, but a tool for his political ends. There is so much about Donald Trump that mirrors the way President Nixon treated the Secret Service. Again, just a way to implement his will. President Nixon used it to eavesdrop on his opponents. President Trump used the Secret Service to look authoritarian, create imagery that he felt would be beneficial to him in communicating to his base, and use them and really put them in great danger of contracting COVID by sending them out on these campaign rallies while COVID was spiking around the country.
I want to get to COVID. I'm glad you raised it, but I want to ask you about something you said on NPR, because it shocked me that this is sort of where they are in terms of an agency seemingly staring into the abyss at this hour. You said they strongly believe that it was a matter of time before a president was shot on their watch. They're worried that the agency increasingly is relying on luck, and it's really a matter of time before somebody finds the right chink and gets through. Wow. Is that their sort of belief of the current state of their abilities?
There are a lot of agents who are worried about exactly that, Nicole. And the reason I can tell you with absolute certainty that that is a fear is because they risk their careers and their jobs to tell me that. Right. The Secret Service has fired people that have spoken to me. The Secret Service investigates to find anyone who has spoken to me or other reporters because it's a fireable offense, or at least they have made it a fireable offense. To take that kind of risk to share this information with me means it's serious. And let's be honest, the moments before President Kennedy was killed, agents knew they were run ragged. They knew that their mission was larger than they could keep up with. They had a jet-setting president, not enough people to cover all the bases, and their own director had been asking for hundreds more agents to cover what was a president constantly throwing himself into the maw of the American public, constantly putting himself in harm's way. those same warning signs are happening now. If we have an untrained intruder who's able to get into the White House in 29 seconds in 2014, and another untrained intruder with no plan gets up to the White House door and walks around the complex 2.5 years later because all of the alarms and sensors and radios are on the fritz. If these things keep happening, the president's alive based increasingly on chance, on luck. Now, of course, it's the dedication of the men and women of the Secret Service that helps protect that person. But give the Secret Service agents the tools they need to actually deliver on their zero-fail mission. They can't be wrong once. Let's give them what they need to make sure they can actually deliver what they promise.
And then I can't end this conversation without, I mean, you had some of the most stunning reporting about COVID and how it impacted them. And the world saw Donald Trump in his hermetically sealed vehicle while he was in the hospital with COVID. What was the president's infection in the White House as a petri dish? What was that like for the Secret Service?
There were agents who reached out to me that day who said, well, now we know he really doesn't care at all. Before they were suspicious he didn't care.
Yeah.
In the defense of the detail, they did, as the director testified recently, they did wear medical grade wear to get into that vehicle with him. So I think those two individuals who are in the SUV with the president were pretty much at a low risk. But so many things had to happen to get Donald Trump, a clearly infected COVID patient, from his room into that SUV. And why? What was the value exactly to the president and to the country to have him take that joyride? Was it worth those steps? Because it communicated to a large number of Secret Service officers and agents that their lives weren't as important as his political joyride and his wave to his base for all of about, 15 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, Chris Christie and Rudy Giuliani and other people close to Trump ended up in the hospital with COVID. Did members of Donald Trump's detail or other people around this White House get sick?
Over the summer, up until October, when the president was diagnosed, 300 Secret Service officers and agents came down with COVID or were exposed to a coworker who tested positive, and they had to quarantine. And the total number, unfortunately, Nicole, has never been tallied. That was the number as of sort of early fall. We just don't know. I'm told that one person died